My name is Sam. I'm the Partnerships and Communications Manager at Fairygodboss. And Fairygodboss is the largest career community for women. Our mission is to improve the workplace by increasing transparency. We offer a ton of great free resources like anonymous company reviews, thousands of job listings that are still active, articles, virtual recruiting events, and so much more to help you all in your careers. So we will be taking questions at the end of today's webinar. You'll find that Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. Feel free to leave questions as yourself or anonymously. Don't be afraid to ask whatever comes to mind. And then we'll also be recording today's webinar and sending it out in a follow-up email later today. So if you miss anything or you want to rewatch it back at any point, you'll have the ability to do so. Here with me today is Emilie Aries. Emilie is a speaker, podcast host, author, and the founder and CEO of Bossed Up, an award-winning personal and professional development community where she helps women craft happy, healthy, and sustainable career paths. She's ranked among such luminaries as Chelsea Clinton and Janet Mock in the Levo 100, and she received WIN's Young Women of Achievement Entrepreneurship Award and the WYCA National Capital Area's 2015 Rising Star Award. Previously, she served on national political campaigns as a digital strategist and grassroots organizer, where she trained and managed hundreds of organizers, helped campaigns leverage online communication technology, and smash stereotypes about women in tech, what I love to hear. Thanks so much for being here today, Emilie. Over to you.
Thank you. Thanks so much to you and to the whole Fairygodboss team for teaming up with us. I'm so delighted that each and every one of you have shared your most precious resource with us today, and that is your time. So my job is to make sure that we make the most of your time together and keep things very practical, actionable, and tactical as we talk through today's topic, how to find a job in a different industry. Few housekeeping notes. I want to call out to my colleague Ellie, who is also joining us today. She'll be helping manage our chat throughout the course of today. So if you've got any questions specifically related to the resources I mentioned, feel free to ask Ellie all about them. We're going to keep this very interactive, practical, tactical, and I'm just excited to dive into a topic I care so much about. Now, a little bit of background about me. I started Bossed Up when I was living in Washington, D.C. 6.5 years ago now, after burning out of the industry of politics. Now, I loved campaigns and elections, don't get me wrong, but no matter how hard you work, no matter how well you do, on election day, win or lose, you're out of a job. So I inadvertently, as a professional advocate, fighting on behalf of causes and campaigns I believed in, became pretty adept at pivoting my career from one campaign cycle to the next. So in 2013, I really wanted to dig deeper into helping women like me who find themselves martyring ourselves for our careers, our companies, our loved ones, to instead set ourselves up for sustainable long-term success. And that was really the question of how to do that. That started it all back in 2013 with the innovation of Bossed Up Bootcamp, our weekend-long training program for women leaders on the rise. Delighted to now focus on helping women navigate all kinds of career transitions, whether it's finding a new job, like what we're going to talk about today, navigating a promotion as a first-time manager, or negotiating to ask for all that you're worth. You can learn more about me and all of the free resources we have available at bossedup.com. But let's dive right into today's topic, finding a new job in a different industry. Now, not everybody finds themselves at this kind of a juncture in their careers on their own volition. So whether you are here because you've recently been laid off or furloughed, or you're simply here because you're exploring what might be out there for you in a different industry, we're going to tackle all the practical and tactical strategies that can help you make a solid case for realigning your skill sets for what the world needs now. So that's really what we're going to dig into deeply today. If you don't already, make sure you download today's interactive handouts. They're an editable PDF, so whether you print them out or simply fill them out throughout the course of today online, make sure to find that in chat. Ellie will reshare that link so we can make sure that you have the tools and tactics to not only listen today, but really to practice and workshop together. So first, let's start by getting a lay of the land when it comes to how COVID-19 has impacted the job search. I know that so many of us fear for our job security, have already been laid off, and fear for our very livelihoods, or in the worst case scenario, fear for our very well-being when it comes to how this pandemic is impacting the world in truly terrifying ways. Your fear is real, it's valid. And I'm not here to minimize that at all. I want to acknowledge just how scary and uncertain this time is. However, your mindset and how it impacts your job search cannot be one of fleeing fear. Instead, we have to bring an abundance mindset to the job search. Otherwise, we're going to end up not finding ourselves getting much success, because desperation can be smelt from a mile away and it just isn't going to serve you. So today, I want to work with you to really audit your many valuable skills that you bring to the table so that we can embark upon a job search that is not rooted in fear, but is instead focused on how you can serve, focused on how there is an abundant array of ways in which you can align your skill sets with the world that needs your skill sets right now. So first, let's acknowledge certain industries are probably not the place to look right now. If you're thinking about where you want to pivot your career to, don't pivot into these industries right now unless you're not really interested in working for at least the remainder of this year. These are the industries that have been hit hardest by COVID-19. And this is by no means an exhaustive list, but a lot of these industries are not hiring right now. Now, at the contrary, a lot of my clients have found success in certain industries that are hiring like gangbusters: shipping and delivery companies, online learning organizations, grocery stores, obviously, but even the grocery chains from a logistics and operations standpoint are hiring. Remote meeting and communication companies. I think we all know Zoom is killing it right now, since we are actively enjoying Zoom's offerings. Childcare, operations, manufacturing, healthcare, cleaning services, these are robustly in need. So if you're thinking, oh my goodness, I am completely out of work right now, I simply need a bridge job that will tide me over, that will help pay the bills, and I need that job ASAP, these are the industries to look at. If you are not in that moment of needing to fill the void immediately, I would be very mindful maybe about working even with a career coach who can help you get a big picture sense of what your values are, what you're really looking for, and what a career pivot would be to set you up for sustainable success. I don't want us to overcorrect right now in the light of a global pandemic by swinging like a pendulum to something completely different than what your career is designed around, just because you've got to be agile forever, right? Let's not overcorrect. Instead, let's make sure that you're aligning your values, your hopes, your dreams with the industry that you're targeting next. Only you can decide how much risk you are willing to tolerate when it comes to holding out for the right job and really keeping a high bar, or compromising a little bit to get some cash flowing in. That is a discussion between you and your bank account and the bills that you have to pay and your own calculus around risk. This is something I talk about with my job search clients all the time. I am here to help hold a high bar for you if that's the position you're in. If you have the privilege of time, use it. If you don't, get out there and target these industries because they are hiring right now. So, what does this mean for a lot of us? It is time to pivot. It is time to think about, where can my skills now be utilized in a new domain for a new company, a new employer, or just in a new way. Now, whenever you find yourself navigating a pivot, it can be scary. There's definitely risks involved. I like to think of it as an experimental design process. With any experiment you run, you've got a hypothesis, right? I hypothesize that transitioning from politics and advocacy to starting my own career services company is going to work. And then the only way to prove whether that hypothesis is valid or is rejected is to try, is to take concrete action to try and make things happen and engage the feedback you get in that process. So as you think about your pivot, we're going to walk through that process of taking your transferable skills, hypothesizing about who can use those skills right now, and then embarking on a little bit of an adventure. Now that adventure can be uncertain. It can be nerve-wracking. So I want to break down 3 key principles today for you to effectively communicate how your transferable skills can apply to where the world needs them most right now. The first is a key principle from all persuasive communication, and that is to know your goals. Here's what I want. And to know your audience. Here's what my audience wants.
Hey,
now you might be thinking, well, I'm not a public speaker.
Hey, Emilie.
Yeah.
Can you just double check your internet connection for us all? We can't quite read what's on the whiteboard.
Well, it may be because my close-up camera has failed today. So if it's a whiteboard
I just want to double
issue,
check, but your
definitely on the right internet.
audio is coming in super clear. Okay.
Okay, that's good. Everybody, we're in a brave new world here, and I was just showing off my fancy multi-camera angle of thing, and we've got all kinds of high-tech studio in action here, and then my camera 2's battery just died. So user error, I'm gonna have to work on the whiteboard. So let me skip using the whiteboard for today. We don't need it. All persuasive communication relies on you getting very clear about what you want, but also getting very clear on what your audience wants. Now, when you're thinking about your audience, I want you to think, who are the prospective employers out there who might be interested in hiring me for my skill sets? But instead of thinking about your skill sets, that's not what they're thinking about. They're thinking about what their problems are. So I really want you to challenge yourself to empathize with those prospective employers. Empathize with employers by thinking about what are the problems that I can help employers solve. Whose problems are such that I can be a solution for them. I'll give you an example of this. Oh God, hold on with me. Bear with me for one more second. Here we go. I'll give you an example of someone who did this incredibly well. My sister-in-law is a legal marketing professional. She works for a law firm. She was on maternity leave when COVID took out everybody. And when she was preparing to come back to work, her employer said, sorry, but don't bother. We're gonna have to furlough you. And she took that news with grace, but she wasted no time. She went right to LinkedIn, as the marketing expert that she is, created a little graphic that said, I am a COVID-19 job seeker. And she said, I can help large to medium-sized law firms who want support on a contract basis or even a full-time basis with their marketing, recruitment, and customer relations. So she marketed herself as, here's who I can help, and here are the problems that I can help that audience solve. She named her target audience explicitly. Now, when she posted that, it was kind of a brash thing to do. So she left a really smart comment, or she included a really smart comment in her post saying, I've just been delivered the news from my employer that I've been furloughed. And of course, I'm hoping that my job and I will get back together, right? That my job will be there waiting for me soon. But I'm also realistic about how uncertain these times are. So if we might not be able to make that happen, I'm even entertaining job offers, but I'm actively looking for short-term contracts. Within 20 minutes, not only was she interviewing with multiple leads on the table, her boss called her back and said, no, please don't leave us. Here's your job back. And they were able to negotiate a path forward. Now, why was her post so effective? She named her audience. She was explicit about her audience and who can help, or whose problems she can help solve. So I almost want you to think like a marketer on the job hunt. This is a persuasion campaign, and you are persuading a prospective employer that you are the solution to the problems they have. You've got to keep all persuasive communication goal-oriented. Here's what I'm looking for. And audience-centric. Here's who I can serve. And that also brings me back to the mindset here, because when you think about service, when you think about who you can serve in your next job, you're not thinking about self-serve, right? You're not thinking about help me, help me, help me. You don't have that air of desperation that is totally valid and understandable, but not very persuasive. Instead, you're thinking, here's who I can help. And it brings almost a generosity to your job search that is very appealing. It shows prospective employers that you're not just thinking of yourself, that you're in fact thinking of others. Now, is it legit to think of yourself? Yeah, very legit in this time especially. But it's important to know your audience and who you can best serve to be most persuasive in this process. So let's get into how we map your skills to your audience's needs. I want you to take a look at the handout that corresponds with today's workshop and list out, it's essentially about doing an audit of your current skill set. So many of us never take stock of how much value we bring to the table, or we just take it as a given. Like, yeah, I've done all kinds of stuff over the course of my career, and it becomes a little vague when we try to communicate that value to others. So I want you to take a minute here, perhaps while I plug in my other camera so we can actually use that whiteboard, and fill out questions 1 through 4 on pages 3 and 4 of your downloadable handout. What skills do you currently perform at your job? Or if you've been laid off, did you most recently perform at your last job? What other skills and abilities are you not using? What latent skills do you have that you've developed in the past but haven't really put to use in recent history? Question number 3 helps you think proactively about skills you've always wanted to develop but haven't been given the chance to do so yet. And then reflect on which of those skills, of all 3 questions that preceded, are most valuable to a potential employer. I'm going to give us just a minute or 2 to reflect on that. And Ellie, if we do have any questions that come up during this exercise, let me know. I'd be happy to answer them.
Okay, sounds great.
Thank you. One of my latent skills is IT that I've been putting to use lately.
Hey, Emily, just jumping in here for 1 second. We
Yes,
did have a question come through about this, and they're asking, do the skills include hard and soft skills?
Great question. Yeah, I can't imagine why not. I think, sadly, soft skills has such a lousy reputation when in fact a lot of industries, especially STEM fields, are actively looking for folks with soft skills. I don't love the false dichotomy between soft skills and hard skills, right? They typically denote more emotional intelligence and people skills on the soft side, or hard technical, applicable expertise, areas of expertise are more connoted with hard skills, but I think it provides a false dichotomy that it's not important to have both. So absolutely include them both, because you just never know who's looking for someone who can bring emotional intelligence versus an area of specific technical expertise.
Yeah, great point. And then Lucia just wanted to know, what level of detail should they go into on these questions?
Since right now this is mostly a reflection for yourself, I'd keep it pretty high level. I like to bullet point things out. It's a way of organizing and mapping your skills so that we can start to see, how does the way that you're describing your skill sets actually apply when you frame it around the audience's needs. So keep it high level for now.
And then we had one question. If you want me to save this to the end, I definitely can, but somebody just wanted you to go over quickly the difference between hard skills and soft skills.
Ooh, this is a good question. From what I understand, typically hard skills are more about areas of expertise, such as coding, mechanical engineering, let's say, or something very specific like legal marketing or having a JD. That's a pretty hard skill. Soft skills are a lot of the leadership skills that I train on actively. We actually have a series coming up tomorrow of 3 trainings I'm doing on crisis leadership, how to care for your people so they'll care for you. That includes emotional intelligence, communication skills, delegation skills, leadership management, project management, which is why I think calling those skills soft is a little silly, in my opinion.
Perfect, thank you.
No worries. Look at me, I got my IT all up and running now too, so we should be good from here on out. I want to give you just a few more moments to finish that handout if you haven't already. I want to also practice turning your skills into a persuasive framing around how we communicate those skills to an employer. So can someone give us in chat here an example of what you wrote down when it comes to the skills that matter most to your potential next employer? I'd love to hear and sort of map out a few skills that we can make sure are framed appropriately. And Ellie, if you see any in the chat that you want to share, that'd be great.
All right, skills coming in. We have new business development, project management, organization.
Nice. Let's take new business development for a second. Or project management, I heard that. And organization. So for the person who said new business development, this is a skill set that I have. I know how to win new business. My question is, if we were to flip this into my audience's needs, how would my audience, in this case, my next employer, describe their needs in a way that relates to your ability to develop new business? They wouldn't say, I'm looking for someone who has new business development skills. They would say, what? We need new clients or customers. They might say, we have no marketing systems in place. Can everyone see my board now, Ellie, or is it still a little zoomed out? Make sure
No, it's just the internet connection is buffering, so it's a little blurry. So you were good before.
Okay. It might be, I have no marketing systems, and up until now, business just came through word of mouth. But now that we're in this weird era, we need someone to do a marketing campaign for us. We need someone to run ads for us. You know, the way that they describe their pain points denotes their hopes and their fears. I like to think of this as the dark and light sides of persuasion. You want to not only know what they hope for, you want to know what your prospective employer fears. So I fear that we're going to run out of clients. Oh, I can help you with that. I fear that our new business pipelines are all going to dry up now that COVID-19 makes walking into our boutique impossible. Think about all the people who have problems like that and frame your strengths as an answer or a solution to that problem. So if your skill set is project management, the problem that that solves is what? An overwhelming array of disorganized client projects, or no systems and structures to manage multi-year, multi-stakeholder campaigns or projects. If your skill set is organization, who are you looking for? Someone quite disorganized. So it's an interesting exercise that I want you to conduct every time you describe your skill sets, to instead of going out in the world and saying, look at me, I can help because I've got all these great skills. I want you to really challenge yourself to empathize with the people you're targeting by saying, if you are a small business who's struggling with project management, I'm your person, right? Call me, I can help. It's a simple change of frame that can really make your job search campaign, especially when you're doing it in a networking oriented way, much, much more effective. Now, one other component here I want you to keep in mind is that you might not have all the skills that you want to have at this point. Who does, right? Who's ever finished growing and learning and developing? So if you find yourself being attracted to jobs for which you do not have 100% of the skills, instead of feeling like an imposter, instead of getting anxious and dismayed and feeling like you'll never measure up, I want you to get very curious about which skills specifically you're lacking. What is the skills gap? One way to do this is to think about who you have a career crush on, someone whose career you really admire. What does she have in terms of skills that you don't yet have? And then the second question to ask yourself is, where do I need to go to develop those skills? Where can I go online? Maybe it's jumping into LinkedIn Learning or upskilling through General Assembly to start to develop the skills that you need to make yourself an even more attractive candidate. Because the reality is that you can't control much in this bizarre world that we're in right now, but you absolutely can control what you choose to do with this time in terms of learning, development, growth, and conducting the most strategic job search possible right now. So let's talk through one other really key skill when it comes to framing your transferable skills as persuasively as possible. And this is what's known in the research as the CAR method. CAR is an acronym here. It stands for challenge, action, results. Now we're going to look at an example together, but I want you to keep in mind first that the methodology I'm going to lay out here is specifically helpful when it comes to fine-tuning your resume and making your resume as persuasive as possible. However, the CAR method can absolutely apply to your cover letters, to your networking conversations, to your emails when reaching out to someone to see if they'd be willing to have a virtual coffee meetup with you. The CAR method is all about storytelling. If you just tell me about your skills and experiences, that's fine, but how does it relate to me? This is about bringing in the full story around the challenge you faced, the action you took, and the results that that action garnered, so that I know as a prospective employer what kind of challenges of mine you might be able to help me with, or what kinds of solutions or results you've derived in the past that you can continue to deliver now. So let's take a look at this together. You could say, I created and implemented a new proposal and lead tracking system. That's how most people write their resume. But when employing the CAR method, you can give even more detail by saying, here's the challenge I experienced, here's the action I took, and here's what came out of it. I transformed our sales close rate from 38 to 74% by developing and implementing a new proposal and lead tracking system. What we're really seeing there, and I hope you can kind of see the highlighting here, is you're identifying the challenge, the action, and the result. It's kind of like sharing the beginning, middle, and end of a story. Now, not everybody has a clear-cut numerical results, like going from 38 to 74%, I know. And especially when it comes to leadership initiatives or people management, it's hard sometimes to quantify exactly what the result is. But that's not what the CAR method is about. No matter how you quantify the result, share it. Tell us the ending of the story, the moral of the story, if you will, in every single bullet point on your resume, so that I know why you're telling me about this experience. How does this experience relate to me? If you don't share the challenge you faced and the results you derived from taking action, I'm not going to know how you can take that kind of action and derive the same kind of results on behalf of my company. So keep that in mind as we go forward. And I want to give you a moment here on the last page of our handout to list off 3 of your past most proudest achievements that you've ever achieved that you think your next employer might be impressed by. And then below that, pick one of them and apply the CAR method to emphasize not only what you did, but the challenge you faced, the action you took, and the results that that action garnered. And then we'll break one down together as a team here. I don't know why I'm so out of breath today. I feel like I typically travel the country speaking like all the time. And now in the age of online speaking, I'm out of speaker shape.
Hey, Emily, just jumping in. Sharice asked, is the CAR method similar to the SOAR method?
Ooh, I'm not familiar with the SOAR method.
So for SOAR, the way I know it is it's situation, obstacle, action, results. So I'm pretty sure it's just a longer version of the CAR method, if I'm not mistaken.
I mean, it sounds very similar. Situation, obstacle, action. What was the last one?
Results.
I mean, action, result, obstacle, those are pretty much the same as challenge, action, result. You know what's interesting? I did a fellowship on public narrative and storytelling when I was an organizer back in the day at the Kennedy School of Government. And I was taught that all narrative storytelling, man, my camera is part of a very dramatic story here today, but all narrative storytelling has a beginning, a middle, and an end, right? This is the challenge that the protagonist faces. And if you've ever watched any play, that's when the curtain drops, right? They've identified a big quest that they need to go on, some massive challenges headed their way. Curtain drops, that's the end of Act 1. Act 1 is just about establishing challenge. Why? Because we're humans. Our brains are wired to lean in when we hear about an obstacle that you're facing. That's when we get really curious. Well, what did you do? How did things turn out? That's when you get people's attention. Then drama, right? The choice that you made happens here, the climax of the story. The protagonist, you can't see that, but you get the idea. The protagonist makes a choice. The world can never be the same. David and Goliath, right? David goes into battle. He decides to face this Goliath unmatched or outmatched. And then usually the least exciting part of the story, but an important part for a parable that teaches a lesson or a moral, is the outcome. What happened? What'd you learn? What did you realize about yourself? So whenever I employ storytelling, for example, the story I just told you about my sister-in-law, the legal marketer, I talked about the challenge she faced coming back from maternity leave, being furloughed, the choice she made, being brazen enough to post what she posted online, and then the outcome, which is frankly the shortest part of the story, but the story would be very incomplete if I didn't tell you how things worked out. So keep that in mind. We are humans, we live for stories. So knowing that you're writing your resume for a human, although I have a whole other, I'm sure you have lots of presentations and blog posts on how to make sure your resumes are also AI friendly. Hypothetically, they eventually get to a human. You want to make sure you you appeal to our human love of the story framework, the narrative arc. All right. Let's see if we can apply the CAR method together. Is anyone struggling with this? I'd love for you to put your attempt at applying the CAR method to your resume line in chat, especially if you're struggling with this, so that we can help. Otherwise, what's the point? We're not here to be perfect. We're here to workshop this together. So let's see if we can break one down together. Any luck? Of anything coming through chat? If not, we can do some hypothetical practicing.
I think people are still writing. Oh, sorry, Ellie.
Nope, you're good.
I love having two facilitators. Can I just say thank you both? Not to worry.
Oh, it looks like we had one come in. Okay, here we go.
Right.
This is from Tori. She says, I recruited and managed 3 classes of interns by pulling candidates from our portal, as well as university visits. Classes grew each year, and we were able to hire about 50% of them each summer.
Awesome. First and foremost, watch out for the bundled skill set. This happens a lot in the resume. Recruiting is really important and certainly important to certain employers. Managing is also really important, but it's a totally different skill set. So first and foremost, let's stay focused on where the story really goes, because recruiting is what your conversion rate at the end there seems to allude to. So if you wouldn't mind, can you read that one more time? She recruited and managed a bunch of what? Interns?
3 classes of interns by pulling candidates from their portal as well as university visits.
Okay.
And then classes grew each year, and they were able to hire about 50% of them each summer.
Awesome. Okay, portal and university visits, and we were able to hire 50% each year. Great. So what I would do, depending on how big these classes were, 3 classes sounds good, but 27 people sounds even better. So think about which of the numbers is most compelling. I don't know how many interns were per class, but if it was more than, I don't know, 3 to 5, you might want to just do the math and say how many interns specifically you managed. So if you had 3 classes, it might sound more impressive to say 25 interns, right? Period, instead of classes of interns. Then, you probably can't see this right now, but portal, you identify people through the portal and through university visits. Now, your portal that you used sounds pretty specific to that one job. So you might want to keep in mind, if the online portal is not a skill that is, or I should say, if recruiting through this online portal is not a skill that's transferable, because the position you're applying for next doesn't have such a thing, you might want to be more generic there. I know specifics are usually helpful, but in this case, it might actually behoove you to be a little bit more generic. And instead of saying using the online portal, you might want to just say, I recruited interns online and via university campus visits. Because why? Recruiting online and recruiting in person are very transferable. So you always want to keep your audience in mind. And then finally, I believe she said, we were able to hire 50% of those interns. Super common, but also something to be aware of. Passive language says things like, I was given the opportunity to serve in a leadership position, or I was afforded the chance to write a big report. It actually removes you as the subject, or the actor rather, in the sentence and says, oh, this just happened. Now, you might not be doing this on purpose at all. This is very commonly done unconsciously because of how we're raised to talk about our skills, or rather to not talk about our skills. Put yourself back in the story here. You're the hero of this story. And yes, I know we rarely do anything alone. Let's say you led a program with 5 other people. That doesn't mean you can't say, I led this program. You're not saying I led it alone. Don't say I helped lead a program, because you're just adding in details there that don't actually strengthen your case here. It's not dishonest to say you led this program if in fact you led it with 4 other people. So just get to the point. Put yourself in the actor's seat here, right? Put yourself as the protagonist of this story and say, and I hired 50% of this campus folks that we recruited, or I had resulted in a 50% hiring, full-time hire rate, or whatever that might be, right? Put yourself back in the actor's seat when describing your result. That's really, really important to make sure the result is tied to your actual activity. Now, hiring might not have happened in isolation. It might not have happened just because of that action alone, but you can still allude to the result being derived in part, if not in whole, because of your activity. Cool? I hope that helps. Was that a helpful illustrative example? I hope so. Depending on the time, we can walk through another example. Yeah, I think we have time for one more example if anyone else has written in with theirs as well. We'll see if I can keep my little zoomed in camera alive for the duration.
Jumping in here, we got another one. Sorry, there are a lot of comments coming in that they loved that past example, so I'm just trying to get back to our previous examples.
I appreciate that.
Okay, let's see. We have, where did it go? B. Brown pitched and got approval to attend specialized trade show that increased qualified funnel by 25 leads over a year.
Okay. So pitched and got to a trade show.
Yep, got approval to attend a specialized trade show that increased qualified funnel by 25 leads over a year.
Okay. Interesting. Okay, so challenge. We don't have a challenge here. Sometimes that's okay. If you can't enumerate your challenge, that's okay. At least have action and result. If you can't enumerate your result, at least have challenge and action. So this is not a perfect science, but we don't really have a challenge here, other than perhaps they didn't have approval to go to the trade show implicitly. So they went to this trade show, and it resulted in 25 leads, which is great, especially if trade show leads are very big. You might want to try to monetize that result as well, you know, resulting in 25 leads or $450,000 in business, whatever that might be. Play with your numbers here. Nobody keeps track of these metrics for you over the course of your career. So if it sounds like a pain in the butt to figure out, it's because it is. It totally is a pain to do the math and figure out what your actions actually resulted in. Now, the one area that I think could really be strengthened here is the action. The result is very clear. The challenge is less clear. But going to a trade show, is that something you could do for someone else and just have the same result? I'm not sure. Maybe we need to talk about developed leads at this trade show. How did you develop those leads? Did you present? Did you host a marketing campaign, like a raffle? Did you speak? Did you network? Did you facilitate connections? I would be a little more detailed here in terms of what actions you conducted that are absolutely transferable, meaning replicable for a future employer. If going to that same exact trade show is all that it takes to hire or to land 25 more leads, they could send anybody to that trade show and they could just be done with what they need to do to get the same result. But I have a feeling that's not the end of the story. I have a feeling that you did something at this trade show that uniquely speaks to your value proposition, what value you can bring to your next employer. I also think pitched is active, got approval is inactive, right? Pitched means I did this thing and I got this result. Got approval is like, I was on the receiving end of someone else's decision, which again puts you in the passenger seat instead of the driver's seat. So unless you're applying for something that requires pitching constantly, and this is the skill set that's transferable, I don't think it really helps your story so much here. Instead, I would say you did X, Y, and Z at this trade show that resulted in all kinds of positive business development outcomes. I hope that was helpful as well. These are some really fun examples, y'all. Thank you so much for sharing them with me. I want to challenge you to really push yourself, to take your actions, AKA your resume lines that describe the things you've done in the past and all the skills that you've worked so hard to build in your career, and make them relevant for your next employer. Don't leave them guessing around how this will relate to your next job. Don't leave them asking this question, so what? How does this relate to me? I want you to be absolutely explicit about answering that question in every single line of your resume. One way that I always challenge my career coaching clients on this is to read every line of their resume out loud and ask themselves, so what? And usually when I'm working with someone on a resume rewrite, I'll ask, so what? Why are you telling me this? And then they'll tell me the best part of the story, which is completely missing from their resume. And then my job is very easy. I just write down what they're telling me. And so if you're missing the so what in your resume, you're missing the point. We need to make sure that you make explicit for your next employer exactly why you're telling them. Similarly, don't tell me a whole bunch of stuff that leaves me wondering why you're telling me this stuff. I love to say, if it doesn't add, it subtracts. Meaning, if what you're sharing on your resume doesn't tell me about what you can do for me as your next employer, it might just distract from the overall position that you're applying for. It might distract from the case that you're making around who you are, what you've done, and what you can do for me as your next boss. So keep in mind, more does not necessarily mean better. I want you to have a focused, targeted, persuasive campaign that you're really leveraging here to make your case as to why you're the best fit for this job. The same thing goes with what I was saying earlier about cutting out superlative, or I should say superfluous language that you might accidentally be including in your resume to soften things. So if you're saying, I helped spearhead a project, or I helped lead a new initiative, if helped isn't adding to your point, cut it. I have a client of mine who just recently got hired in her absolute dream job. It's an ergonomics position. It's in a different state altogether, so it requires a mid-pandemic move, although not right away because everyone's working remotely. She went from being a counselor, in other words, a mental health therapist, to an ergonomic designer, which was not an easy thing to do, especially right now, because she was able to reframe her past experiences, not her most recent job, but the job she had before that, before she went back to get a coaching and counseling degree, and say, here's how my past experience in health and safety and ergonomic design can be of value to you and your company. We had to take her resume and say, all this stuff about counseling up here that's most recent, put it down here. Let's let go of chronological order for a moment, because that's not the number one most focused, targeted, persuasive campaign that we're launching here. We're talking about what value you bring to the table, perhaps from 2 jobs ago, that is most immediately relevant to your new audience. And she was able to land her new job with a huge moving bonus and a major bump up in pay. And of the 9 coaching clients who started with me in our hired program back on March 1st, 4 of them, including her, have landed full-time, majorly improved job offers mid-pandemic already. And it's not even the end of the program. So if you're adding things into your resume because, well, this is what I'm doing now, or I don't know, this is just one of the skills that I have, but it doesn't immediately relate to the position you're applying for, subtract it. If it doesn't add to your case, it's distracting from it. All right, I want to leave you with a couple of minutes for Q&A, of course, but also with some details on our resources that I'm going to make available to everyone for joining me today. Workshop this stuff. But let me just say, practice it, whiteboard it out, work with a friend, work with a coach, get some feedback, get someone to help you parse through this language. It will accelerate your rate of success. We've got some free resources at bossedup.org/job search. You can get our free comprehensive job search guide for the modern woman with 8 different sections. I think it's just over 70 pages long. It is not a light read. It is very detailed and it is 100% free. You can also check out the Bossed Up podcast. Some of you might be here because you know me from the podcast, which is amazing. I love all my pod pals. Recently on Bossed Up, the podcast, I've been producing a ton of episodes focused explicitly on job searching right now and what you need to know to land your best possible job in the midst of this very unfortunate situation we find ourselves in. And finally, if you're interested in Hired, the Job Search Accelerator program that I mentioned earlier, it's 3 months long. Our next cohort starts June 1st. We have just 5 spots available to help you if you're feeling this way, if you're feeling frustrated, overwhelmed, stressed, and just not sure how to navigate the modern job search. It is a 12-week program focused on small group cohort style coaching with online training to improve your skills, gain courage through what is a very nerve-wracking time, and get real-time feedback, not only from me, but from peers in the same situation. You can learn more about our weekly video lessons, interactive assignments, the weekly group calls, all about that and the different options we have at bossedup.org/gethired, where you can also schedule a call to chat things or talk things over with me personally and my staff to figure out which options might be best for you. I want to thank Fairygodboss again one more time for your support today and encourage everyone who is joining to hang in there, to remember the philosophy of lifting as we climb, which is actually the original motto, I should add, of the National Association of Colored Women's Clubs, dating back to 1904. But it is such a really inspiring motto to turn to right now, and keep in mind that abundant mindset that we are all in this together, that we have to keep striving, keep trying, keep climbing ourselves, and let's lift others along the way as we go and make this an easier process for everyone. That's the philosophy we follow at Bossed Up. And I know Fairygodboss is in this as well with that same mindset. I want to thank you both and really thank all of you for joining me here today. If I can ever be of service to you and help you lift as you climb, don't hesitate to reach out.
Thanks so much, Emily. What a great presentation. It looks like everybody really enjoyed it. And we'll be including those resources that Emily mentioned in the follow-up email going out later today. We only have a few minutes, but we had so many questions come in and I just want to try and get to a few.
Sure, we'll do a response time. Yeah.
The question of the hour is resume formats. Technological versus functional versus chronological. What kind of resume format would you suggest for somebody who might be making a career change and who's looking to highlight those skills that might not have been their most recent skills?
For the career transitioner, I'm a big believer in skills-based resumes. Skills-based resume formats allow you to ditch chronological order and focus instead on your most relevant skills, regardless of when and where you acquired them. Ellie, I believe we have a podcast about this, or actually it's the Bossed Up webinar in the past that we have recorded and now available on YouTube with Jessica Aries, my sister-in-law, all about how a skills-based resume is the best format for navigating a career transition. So if you can dig that up in real time, I know it's not easy, and drop a link in there, that's a great resume webinar to check out as a replay to watch for more information.
Yeah, we could make a whole nother presentation just on like the different types of resume formats. So I know people are asking a lot of in-depth details about that. We can't get to them, unfortunately, today. I will schedule another webinar, though, about that topic, so look out for it in the future. And in the meantime, Google is your best friend. Go on Google, search about it. I know we publish those articles on Fairygodboss as well. Check out Emilie's podcast. You have so many resources at your fingertips.
So many. And I was going to add that I find it important to lower the bar when it comes to one-on-one coaching. I have easy, affordable, one-off coaching sessions available for resume help, because sometimes you're just so drowning in contradictory advice online that the DIY route gets very overwhelming very fast. So Ellie, if you want to drop in my coaching link at calendly.com/bossedup, if folks want my one-on-one feedback right away, you can book a spot on my calendar probably this week, and I'd be happy to give you personalized feedback.
Great. That link is in the chat. Refer there. And then I know we're running out of time, but I have one more question that came in from a bunch of people about these CAR statements.
Yeah.
So these are kind of related, so I'm going to just group them all together. One person asked, how can I change my bullet points on my resume to include CAR statements when I wasn't necessarily given the opportunity to make fixes or to make achievements in a quantitative way? So if I can't say, oh, I increased our sales by 20%, if I never had such a numbers driven role, how can I work with this CAR method? And then on a similar note here, do CAR statements only have to be one sentence? Should I be using them throughout my resume? Do I need to limit it to just one? A lot of great questions about CAR statements here.
Great questions. I think the CAR philosophy is the most important thing to take away from this. Beginning, middle, and end. Story, challenge, choice, outcome. CAR is challenge, action, result. However, whatever the acronym or lingo is, human beings respond to storytelling. So if I say, I started my career by rising quickly in the world of politics and digital campaigning, and then I completely burnt out and needed to find a more sustainable way to impact the world without martyring myself. So I started this quest down this path to learn what that would look like. And in the process, not only did I learn how to boss up myself, I started a community devoted to helping others do the same. That's the whole philosophy right there. Challenge, I burnt out with politics. Choice, started my company, went down this path of trying to figure it out myself. And outcome, now I help others do the same. Whether you include it in one sentence or a 5-minute personal story that you tell in an interview or in your cover letter, don't get overly technically focused on the execution. Instead, think of it as a philosophy that can imbue your entire job search strategy. If you feel like you can't quantify your result, talk it out with someone. I bet you can. You could say something less specific, like resulting in a streamlined client acquisition process, or if you're a scheduler for a dentist's office and through working with your boss and your team, you helped reduce errors in scheduling. You can't quantify them. You're not sure when or how it happened, but you did a good job to make sure that patients were experiencing, high levels of customer satisfaction. You can say, I did X, Y, and Z, resulting in a streamlined or an improved or an optimized customer experience, patient onboarding, reduced or mitigated something bad or optimized something for the better. So it doesn't always have to be quantifiable, but I challenge you to tell me, so what? So what that you helped schedule appointments all day, every day? What's the point? What did that result in from a business standpoint? Reduced turnover, reduced attrition, increased customer loyalty, increased customer satisfaction. You can take credit for contributing to very big parts of the business, even if your actions just played a small part of it. Just tell the full story. Don't forget the ending there.
Perfect. Well, I want to say thank you again so much, Emilie. Thank you everyone for your questions and for spending some time with us today. Really appreciate it.
Likewise. Thanks so much for having me.
Of course. We look forward to seeing you all in the next one, and be on the lookout today for that email with a recording of today's webinar and a list of all those great resources that Emilie mentioned. Thanks so much. Stay safe, and we will catch you next time. Bye.